All right, welcome to the Finance and Audit Commission September 5th special meeting. This is a hybrid meeting with Finance and Audit Commission members, city staff, and members of the public participating in the downtown conference room and participating remotely. I'd like to introduce staff and Finance and Audit Committee members present. They include Colin Albright, Lynn Bramlett, Gianta Day. Jeff is not here. Mike Carol Wong and myself. Staff present include Administrative Services Director Brittany Mello, Administrative Assistant Services Director Jared Hanson, Interim Finance and Budget Manager Ronnie Singh, Senior Accountant Ying Chen, and Management Analyst Adrian Patino. Adrian, would you please provide instructions to the Finance and Audit Commission and members of the public on how the meeting will proceed?
All right. Thank you, Chair Normington and members of the Finance and Audit Commission. Welcome everyone to the September 5th special meeting of the Finance and Audit Commission. Staff will engage in webcams and microphones to make presentations and respond to members of the Finance and Audit Commission. For members of the public who are in attendance and wish to provide a public comment on an item on tonight's agenda, after the chair calls for public comment on the item you wish to speak, for virtual participants, you will engage the raised hand feature at the bottom of your screen. For those who are calling in from a landline or from a cell phone, you will press *9. And if you are in person, you will complete a speaker card and return it to me. That concludes the instructions for this meeting, and I return it to the chair.
Thank you. Under regular business, the Finance and Audit Commission considers recommendations from city staff on policy matters or administrative actions that require Finance and Audit Commission approval. Our regular business item is number C1, recommend a 2024-25 work plan for city council approval. To introduce management analyst Adrian Patino to introduce the item, I will introduce management analyst Adrian Patino to introduce the item.
All right, thank you. So we have a brief presentation. So for a little bit of background, advisory body work plans must be approved annually by the city council each year, no later than September 30th. The advisory body work plans are scheduled to be reviewed at the September 24th city council meeting, hence why we're scheduling this special meeting to go over the proposed work plan and recommend a work plan to the city council. As our next regular meeting is in October, which is after that meeting date. The current work plan was approved by the city council at the September 26th, 2023 meeting and included these 13 goals. Number 1, conduct annual review of the city's investment policy. Number 2, review the scope and process of the audit for fiscal year 2022-23 with the city's auditor. Number 3, review quarterly performance of the city's investment portfolio. 4, review the annual independent auditor's report. Number 5, review the annual comprehensive financial report. Number 6, review of the city's pension and post-employment obligations. Number 7, identify potential financial benchmarks. Number 8, identify potential alternative revenue sources. Number 9, OpenGov transparency portal improvements and community training. Number 10, encourage and facilitate robust public comment and participation at commission meetings. Number 11, foster a public meeting environment that is inclusive of all members of the diverse Menlo Park community. Number 12, support the filling of openings on the commission and the effective onboarding of new commissioners. And number 13, which was added as a friendly amendment by the city council, which is research opportunities to pay down successor agency debt. So at this meeting, the commission has the opportunity to review these proposed work plan goals and consider recommending the next work plan for the year 2024-25 to the city council. And with that, I will pause and let any of the other staff have additional comments they would like to add with the work plan proposal.
Certainly, I'll help maybe group the work plan items to kind of refresh the commission's memory. So we have really items 1 through 5 are part of your core charges as a commission, really why this commission was established. 6 through 9 were items that have been added over the past couple of years to the work plan, and have remained to continue to work on them. Numbers 10 through 12 are really those kind of aspirational, community-wide, work plans that you'll see in some of the other commissions and boards. And then number 13, as Adrian mentioned, was specifically added by a city council member last year. So the commission, when reviewing this proposed work plan, can add additional items, remove items that you feel you have successfully completed. Or, yeah, I guess those are the two the two main options. Or I guess modify the wording if you wanted to make adjustments. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any clarifying questions from the Finance and Audit Commission before we take public comment?
At this time, the proposed work plan seems to be the same as the current work plan. Is that correct?
Yes, so it would be, the staff did not make any recommended changes, so it would be up to the commission to add or remove or modify.
So is this when we talk about things that we want to have added or modified, or does that come at a different time? This is just for questions?
Yeah, so right now it's
Only
only clarifying questions about the item itself, or like what we're aiming to do as a commission tonight, or any kind of procedural questions. And then if there's none in that kind of vein, then we can move to public comment and then open for discussion on the actual item itself.
Any other questions? No? Do we have any public comment?
All right. If you would like to comment on agenda item C1, recommend a 2024 to 25 work plan for city council approval. If you are logged in virtually, please engage the raised hand feature at the bottom of your screen. If you are calling in from a landline or from a cell phone, please press *9. And if you are in person, please complete a speaker card and return it to me. Last call for public comment on agenda item C1. And I'm seeing no request for public comment at this time, so you may continue.
Thank you. So now we can open this up for discussion. Anybody has any initial thoughts or comments? I guess my sort of initial view was a lot of these are sort of ongoing. It just seems like all of the things that we do on a regular basis. I don't know if there's any more clarification that we want to do to some of them. If, for example, identify potential financial benchmarks that would support specificity we want to add around that.
JJ and I had discussed the last meeting, like specifically on the investment policy. We
Yeah.
feel the benchmark could be improved there, but I think it fits within scope of that item.
Okay.
I do have a question about item 6, review of the city's pension and post-employment obligations. I think it's sort of one of those items that's been there for a little while, but I don't recall us actually having a subcommittee that is covering it, or maybe I've just forgotten, and we do have a group of members that are specifically looking at it.
We don't have an active subcommittee. I think that when that item was first added to the work plan a few years ago, maybe during COVID, there was some initial work done. But I think because I think COVID maybe interrupted the progress on that.
Got it. Yeah, I was just wondering if we do need to either actively,
Yeah.
because it feels like this item will sit there and no one will really look at it, so.
Well, I'd kind of like to build on that to ask in general, reading over the initial we're supposed to be in support of the city council's annual work plan. Would that be their goal stemming from the goal setting meeting specifically?
Those would be two separate items.
Okay.
So the proposed work plan or the draft would be forwarded after voting by the majority of the commission to the city council.
Oh, that isn't my question.
Okay.
Let me clarify.
Yes.
It says here, in support of the city's council annual work plan. Okay, each advisory body develop an annual work plan that serves as the foundation for the work performed by the advisory body in support of the city council's annual work plan. So my question is specifically, how does this, support that? If we're talking about the goals that they set at the goal setting meeting. So it's a question for the group.
So if I might add, I think the city council establishes their priorities as part of the budget process. I don't believe that is the same thing as the work plan, but I do know there's another item going to council for the city's annual work plan, I believe on the 10th. So that might be a better description of what they mean and how that relates to the commissions. I think some commissions might have more overlap than others with the city's annual work plan, so it might be on a case-by-case basis.
So I guess my question is from a process perspective. So tonight we agree to submit this work plan to city council, and city council with sort of their idea of what they want to achieve in the next year will come back to us with proposals of things they want us to add. Is my understanding correct? Because I believe that's how item 13 kind of got added. It was after, and maybe that answers Lynn your question a
No,
little bit.
actually it doesn't, because, yeah, I don't have them in front of me, but, they have their top goals for the 15% of staff time that isn't already earmarked for things you do day to day. And it's roughly 15%. So, I ask, how does that align? I'm not sure it does actually. But then even beyond that, I'm interested in process too, in terms of how would we measure success for some of these? And if you meet quarterly, what are the expectations for doing anything outside of the meeting? Just as an example, one of these is encourage and facilitate robust public comment and participation at commission meetings. Well, I suppose I could post notice to Nextdoor and try to get people here, but no one commented tonight. I don't think I've ever heard anyone comment. So I'm kind of interested, basically, if we have goals, how are we going to measure them and accomplish things? So, it's kind of a question for the group, I guess.
Well, I guess once we decide on what the goals are, it seems like then we go through a process of prioritization and building subcommittees to focus on each of the goals. So I think your point is a good one. Some of these are active, like we're actively doing things, and some of them just sort of sit here and we don't do anything. So we're not gonna do anything, just take it off.
So on that note, do we believe there's more to be done around open gov transparency, photo improvements, community training? Or, should we, because you're taking it up?
Matt, it is my goal to work with you before April of next year to kind of take this to either a next step or completion. I hope you agree.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, we've done some initial work on it, but it's.
Yeah.
Okay, I was really I was really under the impression that you completed.
We've reported out,
Yes, that's what made me think it was completed.
but we haven't actioned on some of the things we could do.
Yeah, because I guess this is totally off topic, but there were some recommendations that we had as
Mhm.
part of that.
Yeah.
That we need to push through
Mhm.
to whoever it is that would input that.
It's sort of like Lynn actually asked me where she could find the OpenGov link. So that was like a small thing we could probably do, like just make sure it's visible on the website.
Do you want to go through each of these? Should we just go through one by one? And
From what I understood, the top five
Yeah.
are part of the core charter, so. Should we start with all or perhaps start from
so we
six?
start with six.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And if I might make a correction to what I said, number two. Review the scope and process of the audit for fiscal year 2023-24 with the city's auditor. I believe that was added last year because we had gone through the request for proposal process and was onboarding a new
Oh, yeah.
auditing
Mhm.
firm. And so we wanted to make sure that new auditing firm came before the commission. And they presented to you kind of on there that scope and process. So the commission might decide that that was enough as they were onboarded, or you may want to have that, each year. Otherwise, they would come and present for the review the annual comprehensive financial report item. So kind of up to the commission.
Personally, I think it is helpful for them to come in each year. Obviously, we have new council members who might not be familiar with the process. Plus, audit methodology changes year after year. There might be new things they're looking for, so I think it is good for awareness.
okay, yeah, so we'll leave that on there then. I guess you want to change that to the 23-24 year?
Yes.
It's Jim.
So then reviewing pension and post-employment obligations, what was? You said that was a goal that was put on pre-pandemic or around that time period?
I believe so. Because of the pandemic, there was an interruption, turnover with staff and an interruption in the regular meetings of this commission. And so we've kind of pieced that together.
And what was done? Do you have any recollection of what progress was made there? Like, what did they do?
Fortunately, none of us were
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, I don't think, I wasn't either.
But we can look back to see if their notes.
Certainly we can try. Sometimes the commissioners report out verbally, but we as staff don't have their notes or writings. So we might be able to look back at the videos.
Is that something the council continues to expect us to be involved in, or is that not a?
I do not know if that item came from city council. Request that the commission review it, or if it was a commission generated item.
Well, to me, it kind of begs the question, what is the deliverable they expect? Is it, a reporting out here verbally? Or coming with recommendations that we discuss and then go to council? So to me, process and deliverable expectations would be useful to discuss as part of this.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I remember accurately, but I do remember at some point someone mentioning that in terms of pensions and post-employment obligations, city engages with an actuary that sort of, measures the liability and that gets reported. And maybe part of the review is having the actuary come and present on the process. I might be completely misremembering this, but I think I do recall a similar conversation happening, but I don't remember anything beyond or the reason why we put it on the work plan in the first place.
Okay. Well, guess we can come back to that if you want. The financial benchmarks, this is comparing against these are certain financial, data points that we're comparing against other cities besides Menlo Park, and what do we do with that information?
Well, I'm on that subcommittee with Jeff, who isn't here,
Okay.
and I would say more progress to your point about the other could and needs to be made.
Okay.
And I think what would be helpful is some kind of accountability for reporting.
Mhm.
You know, I reckon we're all volunteers, so I'm not trying to, but that is helpful for me to have an expectation. Every there's a subcommittee reporting perhaps at every meeting.
Mhm.
But I'll talk with Jeff, and we have done research, but we haven't put it together.
Okay. Did you want to clarify in this goal, do you want to expand on it at all or change?
No, I would say it would be
Okay.
comparative.
Okay.
So I think we just have to package it
Okay,
and in a form of recommendations. It's become more evident to me that that's what we're to bring forward, kind of recommendations. At least that's my understanding.
and are you also number 8, the alternative revenue sources?
I am, and Jeff and I met with staff. Jeff verbally had about 4 or 5 ideas, and I had come with a report that I had, brought at the last meeting. I think he had a few ideas for taking the information and looking into it. On my end, I don't even know how to describe the meeting other than our clear takeaway was instead of trying to help with something, what we are to do is to come with a recommendation. And I think the idea of a more narrow focus on alternative revenue sources.
Okay,
So, yeah, so I don't know if you have any more comments, or if you were all at the meeting, I think, or most of you.
So Lynn,
Yes.
I guess what I'm hearing is that in the readout from the last meeting, you have identified a couple of things, so we want to sort of narrow it down to maybe the few things that you've identified that you and Jeff want to move forward with, or?
Well, I think what would be helpful, and we did reach out to try to meet with staff before the meeting, and I know that emails can get buried, I've missed them myself. But sometimes I think that would be helpful with the subcommittee to kind of check in, are we on the right track? Before going to trouble having a meeting here, and then, because I think we were looking for some tweaking, but it became clear in the meeting that this was not the correct path. The focus should be on the new revenue sources and not possible ways of saving money and coming with recommendations. So that was my takeaway. So that is the way that Jeff and I will proceed unless we hear differently. So I don't know how he's not here, so I don't want to speak for him, but, I think some of the ideas certainly have merit. And, saving money, I think still has merit, but whatever we come up with, it should come in the form of a recommendation.
so you don't want to modify this to say alternative revenue sources and or expense mitigation?
Well, I think actually that would be a good idea.
So it's like, yeah, I remember you mentioned that was something that you looked into.
I think too, just more clarity with the council in terms of, I know we have our charter, but there's a kind of a gray area, if you will. You come up with recommendations, and then there is some research involved that someone could be doing. Because we can't, what if we recommend something and staff doesn't have time, it's a good idea, then where do you go with that idea? So, just, I don't know that we can resolve all this tonight, but yeah, what if you liked some of the ideas? Let's say we wrote a report, we came forward, here's all the research, the references. But if the staff, we can't put, have any work put on the staff, I recognize that you have your day to day. But if someone else, if commission members couldn't contribute toward that, where would the idea go? So I guess I'm interested in spending my time on things where, you would have some kind of outcome and better, what is the deliverable and so forth. So I don't know if that's kind of helpful.
Okay. Now, maybe logistically, when maybe we should look at a calendar, try to plot out, like, these are when the subcommittee meetings would happen. And then there's some advance notice, we can get city staff, like a touch point can happen with the subcommittee and city staff. So that there's, so that doesn't get lost.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
So Lynn, very specific to this item, I think Matt suggested potentially adding sort of expense mitigation or identifying savings. Is that something you would like to amend for this item?
Well, I personally don't want to propose it based on our meeting with the staff. But I do think that that is an important topic and a reasonable topic. So, like for example, one of the items was the community grant funding. That the city gives away, I don't remember how much it was last year, 300,000 or something. And I had my own thoughts about it. I attended the meeting. I could have given some high level input in terms of but I spoke more about the idea that this commission could in fact help. That is something potentially we could be doing research for. But what I heard was because the council didn't say the FAC could work on that, they concluded that that they didn't want that. Because I didn't say that as a suggestion, because I think, I don't want to just go to a meeting, I wanted, so. But then when I talked with one, in fact, well, our liaison suggested that we could help with it. So there's a little bit of, maybe. So I personally don't want to add it, but I think expense mitigation is important.
And maybe if I could add a little bit to that, I think there does become a little bit of a blurry line going into expenses. In the fact that the city council approves the budget. The budget is their policy document. And so in that policy document, they are directing staff, certain levels of staff with our full-time equivalents where they want people working on things. And then capital improvements, all kinds of where they want the money going to where. And so through that document, they're establishing kind of service levels and costs associated with different services. So I think looking at expenses might veer into service levels, which is explicitly the purview of the city council. So I'll just add that comment.
But couldn't your focus be on like future, like the next fiscal year? Like, I get that the budget's approved and council already has how they want to spend their money.
I think this topic would be a useful thing to talk about with the council, get their opinion on it in terms of, because the Environmental Quality Commission is it's known to be an active commission. They've been praised for that. I've heard council say that. So I don't know if there was kind of who knows what could take place outside of a public meeting, but to me, it's reasonable to think that someone could, with parameters, do research and at least meet with staff. I'm not talking about, I realize you would want to contain something, people who applied for grants, you wouldn't want to alarm them, but there could be some level of work that we could do. So I do view that as different than service levels because It has been a concern. It's something, I was kind of surprised to see it before the agenda, the council agenda so quickly, but I view it as something different. This is money they're giving to nonprofits or the equivalent. And concern was raised about it for more, scrutiny of these grants. And so to me, it's not like an ongoing service level. This is, and it was something raised as a concern by the council. Someone's going to have to do it. I imagine the staff will be doing it. So I view it that as just a little bit different than the general service levels. But I think this would be a good thing to ask this council about. And, properly frame with the questions in terms of what would they like in terms of that topic, or even involvement in a practical way with some of this without overstepping. So I don't know how to put it any better today, so I'm sorry.
How would we do that if we wanted to get input from council? Isn't there a council member that's supposed to be the liaison to our committee? And with that person, is that something that a person that we would work through?
Yes, the commissioners at any time can reach out to their city council assigned liaison to discuss matters related to the Finance and Audit Commission. I think, if I may add, I did intend my comment to be more broad. I think for the specific community funding grant program, the direction by the majority of the city council was to put that program on hiatus at this time. And they did not direct it to the FAC to work on it. So that would be the rationale for that.
Okay,
So just to clarify, that program is now on hold. We're not providing any grants to
Yes,
anyone. Okay,
the council approved a 6-month hiatus.
6 months. Okay.
and okay, this is way off topic, but Len, and why is it on a hiatus? Why is it on hold? Because there's concerns were raised by
Yeah.
residents.
Nick, a council member who wasn't there raised concerns
Okay.
about the program.
Okay, okay,
And personally, I had my own, having followed it for a couple of years. She wasn't at the meeting, and I viewed it as kind of a compromise, if you will, because some of these groups are probably used to that revenue stream, and it would be a big shock to suddenly. So it would give the staff, they kind of had. Either they had to, start putting out the call for the next year, or do something and put it on hold was a compromise. But I think the fundamental issues didn't go away in terms of, and they did have a discussion about that. What's the amount of the grant, what kind of group, all that. I was at the meeting. Okay, so I heard all this.
so then it just coming back to your
Yes.
example then. In that situation, are you suggesting that we seek clarification from the council liaison to see if they are interested in us helping to analyze?
I would ask him maybe more broadly, for the work plan. Alternative revenue sources do you see any role in terms of possibly recommendations for expense mitigation? And see what they say, because that could be, a number of things. But if they don't like the idea, then we have a clear cut answer.
Sure.
That's my suggestion.
Well, so then maybe we leave this category, but yeah, I guess sort of coming back then to your question was, do we want to amend the title of the category? And maybe we should, since this is our proposed work plan.
Okay, and then see what they
Yeah.
think. They can strike it.
Yeah,
Okay,
I reckon that's a much faster path.
okay.
Trying to find 2 years on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, because it stays to be a group.
Yeah.
Changes me.
Okay, all right. So we'll make that change. Do you have any thoughts on new items?
think it's a pretty full work plan, at least for now, in my view.
Some of these I think are the same for all commissions.
Yeah. Yeah, like the top, like the. Section 12.
Yeah,
We perhaps sort of, I'll go back to item 7, identify potential financial benchmarks. So is it? Are we? No, actually, I'll,
we suggested benchmarks in general, but it was limited to financial, which I understand. And it's just 2 of us, so I think we could have one more. If anyone would like to join us, we'd love it.
no. What I was saying is, I'm gonna wait to see here
Oh,
the
okay.
thing. Mike sort of, I was saying no to myself in that. I'm looking to see. It's clear that there's a lot of work items and they may not be subcommittees, so I was looking to see is there something we should say we don't need to this year?
Yes,
Yeah,
So that was the spirit which I was looking at it, and that's when I said no to myself.
okay.
I mean, one thing, and I think this is too big of a topic to chew for this group, but it has been top of mine recently. The fact that there's so many for rent spaces downtown and it's practically dead. And I've always wondered, what is our city doing around trying to incentivize businesses to set up shop downtown to try to revitalize the downtown? So many businesses have left and nothing's been rented and, I don't think like this group can completely solve that problem, but I was wondering if there's some sort of a financial or economic element to that. That could be something that we could work on if that was something that city council was interested in. Help with.
Yeah. So my limited understanding, at least for one of the restaurants downtown, was that the landlord increased rent and they could no longer afford to be there.
Yeah,
So that could be also why.
yeah, I think it's pretty common, yeah.
I like your suggestion. I think there's a real need. And I did hear he's running for District 3 unopposed. So I heard him say this at the Environmental Quality Commission. So it's a public meeting that he had been talking with. Well, it's of concern to him too.
Oh, okay,
And in terms of the rents, I don't know if something could be done. Because a lot of those buildings, my understanding is they've been on for decades. And so the amount of profit they're making.
yeah,
There is a possibility that there could be something proposed.
Well, they're not making profit if the buildings are vacant. But perhaps there's some development opportunities that dovetail into alternative revenue.
yeah,
They might not be making a profit, but they might be getting something out of holding it and not, but I don't know. You're right, they wouldn't be collecting rents. I have heard that the interim business development manager at a Chamber of Commerce meeting, that would be Fran Dean, the San Mateo Chamber of Commerce. The topic was brought up, all the vacancies, and she said a number of them they aren't necessarily vacant because there's plans in the work to do something with the building, but people might not know. But, that's her point of view. You know what I mean? I don't know that there is a plan.
yeah, okay.
We also had that building for years that was vacant. Remember those signs about Chuck Kinney? Some of you might not remember, but they had a building on a corner and the building owner had a grudge against, I think, a former council member. I don't remember all the history, but it was a person well known. It was these signs denouncing him in the corner of a building. And that went on for years. At least that's gone, but it kind of begs the question of what, plan for our downtown.
I mean, do you guys know, is that a topic the council has ever talked about, the fact that downtown is so pathetic?
So last fiscal year, I forget the exact phrase. I don't think it was revitalizing downtown, but some kind of, one of the 5 council priorities for last fiscal year was downtown related. At their workshop for this year's goals, or city council priorities, downtown was removed. That downtown item was removed to focus on the other 4 items. And so I think any comments about downtown are probably specific as they come up. Like last council meeting, there was discussion about the parking lots downtown as it relates to the housing element and potentially building affordable housing there. So I think it's kind of a item by item basis that comes to council where that they discuss it. There was the streeteries last year for the restaurants to have continue to operate their food establishment businesses in the public right of way. So it comes up periodically.
Well, it seems like maybe the pension obligation could be considered to be removed, because I think the city is making real progress on paying down their pension liabilities, as I understand it. And maybe the downtown would be of a more urgent need.
Something interesting, yeah. Something that I thought about,
How would you phrase it if it were added?
yeah, that's what
It would have to be in financial terms.
incentive to encourage.
Financial incentives.
Yes,
In, what do they call, office, no, commercial?
retail, like retail. Yeah.
It's not industrial, it's not residential, it's not, it's.
Was it commercial?
Yeah, one of them, yeah.
Well, it would be
Yeah.
timely too with the idea of building housing on the city's downtown parking lots. Which, we won't see any right away, but you then have a captive audience to, we're talking years out, but as part of a forward looking. To me, the topic would be very timely.
Well, isn't it finance related? Because the more traffic you get down there, the more tax revenue comes into the city, right? So isn't it all? I mean, it kind of comes back to that can fall into your alternative sources, right? Alternative sources get more,
Money out of downtown.
Yeah, commercial is all inclusive. It's a retail industrial.
Okay.
It's a general umbrella.
So the item would be something like research ways to encourage
To increase opportunity.
occupancy, okay?
Commercial real estate in downtown. Love to hear if you have any feedback on the wording.
I would like to see some, I love your suggestion, but maybe a suggestion for increase. We also want a variety of occupancy, not more carpet stores, with all due respect, or nail salons,
So I've always wondered how the carpet stores, like, how do they make enough money to like rent all that space just selling carpets?
There's a lot of them. Yeah.
Yeah, any carpets.
Yeah, nobody carpets. Someone-
It will carpet rental business or a sales business. The one weekly rentals.
Let's try it.
Subscription model. Subscribe to our carpet.
So like increase a diverse occupancy,
Yes,
something like that?
yes, that'd be great.
Okay. So do you want to replace, are we replacing the pension one with that?
Yeah, I think we should, unless staff, you've been able to unearth anything from the past on why this was an issue. Because I don't think amongst us, any of us want to look
Yeah.
further into it,
The
so.
only thing I can find just by glancing at what has been brought up is it looks like it was related to the unfunded actuarial liability and how to reduce that. And there's been quite a number of presentations to council in the past on that, plus the council adopted an additional extra payment every year to
Yeah.
help pay down that pension obligation. And just some discussion around that is what it looks like from what I can see in there, but there's not, and then communicating that, how do you communicate that and say what we're doing and why?
So perhaps a way, a reasoning can be there's both proposals made and actions taken towards these, so. Therefore. We suggest we remove this and add something more, the contemporary issue.
Okay,
Agreed.
so we'll delete number
6.
six. Okay. Okay. Do we revisit subcommittees at this time for these things, or is that it?
So we sort of did that at the last
Oh, that was,
meeting.
okay, yeah, I wasn't there. Okay.
Yeah, we, so Colin and JJ were assigned to subcommittees, but I don't remember, Janta, do you want to join a subcommittee? Are you on a subcommittee now?
I'm not on the subcommittee.
Oh.
I did not intentionally miss the last meeting knowing that, oh, no. This is the meeting I should skip it.
I didn't show up, and it ended up becoming the stuff.
Yeah, I'm happy to be part of last time.
Yeah.
This was brought up, I should have like to get a little bit more insight before joining. But I don't, I don't have a preference. All I had asked was if there's somebody who's been in a subcommittee before it. I could be part of that, but that's not a hard requirement, just as it wants.
Okay, well, I'll obviously be part of the downtown subcommittee, and I'll continue to be part of ours.
Yeah. So can we assign Janta to a subcommittee at this meeting, or do we have to agendize that for another meeting?
Yeah, so what I would suggest is that tonight we agree upon a work plan to propose to the city council. They will review it at their September 24th meeting. Once they approve a work plan, we'll bring it back at the next regular meeting in October. And then as part of that agenda, we can incorporate review and formation or reassignment of subcommittees as part of the review of the approved work plan. Okay.
Can you wait until October?
Sure.
Okay, any other edits? Changes, anybody else?
Number 13, I thought, I heard at the last meeting that the people had researched it. And it felt like that item was closed. Is that correct? Or,
No, I'd signed up the subcommittee. so-
okay,
I signed up for that.
oh, yes,
We did
It's
have,
a work in progress.
okay,
we did have that report out.
Yeah.
From the prior commissioners. That's one example where we as staff did not receive anything in writing to help you with your research to build upon. So it might be
Yeah.
more research to get you up to speed to where they were. Maybe they'd still be willing to share it with you.
And so on that note, for items that are approved by the city council in October, what is the timeline for deliverables?
Yeah, this is meant to be the annual work plan. As we noted, some of these do carry on more than a year because it's just a larger item and there is, of course, limited, time to accomplish each of them. So there's no hard and fast timing or requirement for anything on the work plan. The top 5 items that are the core of the commission do have strict timelines, and so the staff would put those on the agenda for your review prior to it going to city council meetings. The other items are more open-ended.
All right, so should we move on? Okay. And so how do we work the change? So that we made some changes. Did you catch all of that or do we need to restate the changes? Summarize them?
So. So what we have is proposing to remove the original work plan goal number 6 of reviewing the city's pension and post-employment obligations. And I think what I've kind of gathered from the spirit of the discussion for the replacement is something along the lines of research opportunities to encourage diverse occupancy of commercial vacant downtown spaces.
Yeah.
Maybe real estate instead of spaces. Just in case it gets into apartment spaces. But
And we're adding on number 8.
Mhm.
We're adding, you should,
I think your phrasing originally was identify potential alternative revenue sources and expense mitigation opportunities to consider.
okay,
We could also call it potential opportunities to soften it even more. If that would be better. And it,
But, okay, I assume the first potential covers for, but it's.
oh, yeah, potential expense mitigation opportunities, yeah,
okay,
that sounds good.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, you're right, okay.
All right, well. Yes,
No, I was just gonna say on number 6, where we're talking about the opportunities for the occupancy, you might want to bring that to some type of financial impact or have something listed there. Because if we're talking just about
yeah,
encouraging that, that's not, I believe, in the scope of what this commission would do. Just by looking at that, how it's worded there, just.
yeah, so we should probably add something there about increasing sales tax revenue or,
Thereby increasing sales tax revenue.
yeah.
Well, would we be limiting it just to limit to sales
Yeah,
tax?
that's right. It isn't just sales taxes, aren't there developer fees and other.
To increase revenue.
Yeah,
Yeah, increase revenue.
increase city revenue.
Also, should the wording be encourage diverse occupancy or increase diverse occupancy?
Research
A few
opportunities to encourage. Yeah, to increase instead of encourage, yeah. Research opportunities to increase diverse occupancy of commercial vacant downtown. Real estate to increase city revenue.
I don't want more carpet stores, so diversity would be good.
How many carpet stores are there? Like
Could be
two?
like,
Oh, say this again.
5?
Fun.
We do have
it's pretty of carpet stores.
we have a lot of like household durables. Gym equipment.
That used to be a carpet store.
That's true. All right. Any other changes here? It's look good to everyone. Okay. Well, so Adrian, do you want to state the motion?
All right, so motion to recommend a 2024-25 work plan for city council approval with the direction to remove work plan goal 6 of reviewing the city's pension and post-employment obligations and replacing it with research opportunities to increase diverse occupancy of commercial vacant downtown real estate to increase city revenues, and to modify work plan goal 8 to include potential expense mitigation opportunities.
All right, do I have a motion and a second for the stated vote?
Motion. Second.
Okay. And then all in favor?
And the motion passes.
All right, and I think with that, we can adjourn. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Hmm. Okay.